So to start with, so pleased to have you on this course. Thank you for joining it. So this is a 6-week session where we focus on entrepreneurship, innovation, and social change. It's a topic that I really enjoy, and I hope that I sort of know that we're going to have some great discussions and unpack some really important concepts. And it's just really great to have you involved. So thank you very much for joining. For our Zoom call today, I just want to go over some general house rules and etiquette, which we'll try and keep the same throughout the 6 weeks in the live sessions. So just a few things. We will be doing breakout rooms and using the chat function. So just make sure that you can, find the chat box. You've already chatted in there, so I know that's fine. When you aren't talking, if you can, just keep yourself on mute, and I will do the same. We do want this space to be quite engaging and to have a lot of discussion. I will be presenting some of the course content and some ideas. So I will be doing a bit of talking, but really we want it to be a conversation. So at any point when you have a question or a comment, please do just, hi Nkosi, great to see you. Please just do pop in when you want to. So in this virtual space, we're really co-creating and navigating a space together. And so I just ask everyone to be mindful of how you negotiate, wanting to ask your questions and share your ideas, alongside making sure we have space for everyone to do that. And my role as facilitator will be trying to manage that. So if at some point I sort of take us away from a topic to another topic, it's not to say that I don't think that that topic is important or could be discussed more. It's just so that I can try and keep us on the content that we want to cover, and also try and make sure that everyone that wants something to say, has a question, can do so. So that's just something about how we facilitate this connected space. Are there any questions around that? Great. Okay, so now I'm going to jump right in to our material for today. Okay, so this first week of the course, we're really unpacking the idea of social entrepreneurship and social change. And so hopefully you have seen that within your resources and the introductory video as well. But before we get into that, I want to just do an overview of what you can expect from the course as a whole. So as I say, this week we look at, understanding the landscape. Next week, we talk about this idea of non-profit organizations versus for-profit organizations and alternatives to those. In the third week, we really dig into the business plan. Now, the business plan is going to be your final assignment to this course, but in each week, we're unpacking ideas that relate to your business plan in the end. So we're really trying to help you navigate these different pieces and the content so that you can prepare your business plan in the end. And we want this business plan to be a tool that you can use as you try to develop your ideas. That also just the process of creating the business plan can be incredibly helpful, even if you actually don't use that final product to get funding or whatever you might want to use it for. In the fourth week, we look at measuring impact and evaluation, which we think this is a really important part of making sure that your project or your idea or your organization can be successful in what you want it to be. In week 5, we look at how you could scale your social enterprise or your idea, particularly looking at how you're scaling your mission. And then in the 6th week, we look at sustaining positive change, where we unpack positive leadership, social change, and we also touch on a bit of marketing and how to build a team. So what we like to do within these webinars, I give some introduction to some concepts and we can discuss those. We have a really experienced cohort, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different work experience, study experience, and a lot of expertise. So we really want to draw on each other as well, and I hope to facilitate that. And we want you to connect as much as possible. So that's something we try and do in these live sessions. So Within each session, we do open up with something that's a bit off topic, but that helps us to connect, and we will be putting you into breakout rooms to discuss certain pieces. But whenever we begin, that's how we try and set the tone for the webinar ahead. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Shelley, and I am from South Africa. I currently live in Cape Town, South Africa, but I have been living and working in abroad for several years. So I've just recently moved back to South Africa. I am connected to UPeace through work that I've done with my social enterprise called Good Travel, which is based out of New Zealand. And we started it, myself and 3 other co-founders, 10 years ago, quite soon. Like it's going to be our 10-year anniversary quite soon. And essentially what we try and do through the social enterprise is to change the tourism industry into a force for good. And in the past, we've largely worked with travelers, trying to educate travelers and trying to facilitate experiences that have a positive impact in the countries that travelers go to. Now, we've seen many iterations of this business and the way we do business over the years, which is something that I will talk about as an example in a case study as we go through this course. So the other organization that I've just recently started is called Node, and it's a marketing and communications consultancy where we aim to support social enterprises, schools, because that's where a lot of my experience is, working marketing communications for education as well, and nonprofits. So the idea behind this consultancy is really to help people and organizations that are wanting to have a positive impact to be able to do that and scale in a way that's sustainable. Then another project that I'm quite actively involved in is a group called the Kliptown Youth Program. They are based in Soweto, South Africa. And I help to facilitate international trips for their members. Okay, we've got someone else joining, just letting them in. So throughout these organizations that I work on, there's also been many projects and organizations, social enterprises that I've tried to start that haven't worked. And through my consulting, I've also had the opportunity to work with many nonprofits and many social enterprises around the world. So I really hope that I can just bring some of those experiences and those case studies that I've worked with and help to connect them to your ideas, you know, as tools for learning and maybe networking and connections as well. And I think just an important part of that too is, you know, change and iteration and things not working and experimentation is sort of a constant part of this journey of, you know, what we call social entrepreneurship. So something just to be mindful of as well as you try and think about the ideas that you want to bring to life. So next up, I'd like for us to just get to know each other a little bit better. So I'm going to ask if you're able to at this point to put your videos on so that we can really get a face-to-face and meet you. Then I'd love for us to just go around the room, and if you could just share your name, you know, what you prefer to be called, a little bit about your background, and then tell us 1 or 2 things that you really hope to gain from this course. And then we ask you to pick the next person to speak. We're just a small group, so we can have a few more minutes on this. I think give yourself about 3 or 4 minutes to introduce yourself. So I just want to say welcome. Is it Orak? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Welcome. I'm glad you could join us. Okay, so Wendy, can I start with you? Would you be able to just give us a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Oh, certainly, Shelley. Good morning, everybody. Well, my name is Wendy Campbell-Poor. I prefer to be called Wendy. That's fine with me. My background, I have a very strong background in communications. I spent 15 years in the local media. I also went into public relations after leaving the media, and then I went into education. I'm still in education, actually. I am the subject head for the English and Communications Department of one of UWE's subsidiaries, that's Roytech. I know that NCOSI, you may know about Roytech, but Roytech is just a business school, right? And I've since set up my business that's events, communications, as well as education. And unfortunately, I rebranded that business in October of 2019. And thereafter, well, not too long after that, COVID struck, so that the events part of it was severely affected, but the education remained intact, as well as the communications part of it. What I hope to gain from this course is to, now I am involved in, I do a lot of corporate social responsibilities. Now, it's not the same as the social entrepreneur because CSR is more of a reactive approach, whereas the social enterprise is more proactive. So that, you know, I want to try to include that into my business as far as possible, so that I can, you know, do some different things rather than the same old that, you know, we are seeing out there. So the next person I'm going to pick, my compatriot and Kosi.
Okay, we will move on to Ernesto. Ernesto, if you're free, and then Kosi, we can come back to you.
Okay, well, hi to everyone. I'm Ernesto. I live in Costa Rica. I work in Cartago, in Pacayas, and I live in San Jose. Well, my background is I'm a musician, educator, and administrator also. Well, I want to learn this course for give me tools for make better the music school that I work in right now. It's a community music school, so it's definitely non-profit experience, but very loving about have the opportunity for playing, learn about music in a very rural community. So that's well, is a little bit about me, I think.
Great, thank you. Thanks to you both.
And I pick Aura, I think.
Hi, Orak. Are you there? Are you able to unmute yourself and do an intro? Ah, great.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah,
Hello,
you are.
everyone.
Hi, nice to see you.
Yes, me too. Yeah, my name is Orach Gochu Toby. I prefer to be called Toby, and I'm currently in a remote town called Bentiu in South Sudan. I work with the UNHCR, the refugee agency here, predominantly dealing with the internally displaced persons at the moment. But I'm originally from Uganda. My background has really basically been in humanitarian assistance for over 10 years, basically working with internally displaced persons and refugees, refugee situation. I joined this course precisely for two reasons: personal, but also to do more with my career. In line with my career, we work with the forcibly displaced persons, that is IDPs and refugees. And currently there is a very strong movement in terms of finding solutions for IDPs and refugees. And the idea is to find innovative ways how communities affected by conflict and disasters can how we can find solution for their situation. So for me, I hope this course will help me to be able to design more innovative solutions to IDP and refugee situation. And also at a personal level, I am trying to set up social enterprises in back home in my country. So I want to take advantage of this course to help me to design my social enterprise. I try to put up a small intro on the group page, and that would probably shed more light in terms of the kind of thing I want to do. But it's more on agriculture. I want to see how I can develop social enterprise that promote wealth creation in my community and actually pull them out of poverty. So basically that is a brief about me, and I look forward to interacting with the group and learning more from each one of you. And by the end of it all, I hope I will be able to come up with my business plan to kickstart my social enterprise. Thank you, and over to you.
I just, was listening to a few things that came up in all of your introductions, and thank you for that. Wendy, really interesting what you were saying about the CSR and how it can be reactive versus whereas social entrepreneurship can have this idea of being proactive, which I thought was a very interesting insight that you gave, and something I think we can talk on more. And Arak, you're talking about how social entrepreneurship could be a powerful tool for creating some wealth generation and really lifting people out of poverty, which I think is very powerful. And Ernesto, you talking about this, the school is really a community-based school, and that there's room there for finding initiatives that can sort of probably address some of the challenges there. And so as we move into this, unpacking this concept of social entrepreneurship, I just want us to, to think about that as the way we think about social entrepreneurship, or I should say I within this course, is it's not always tied to starting a social enterprise. And although within this course, we do get into the nitty and gritty of how do you start a social enterprise, social entrepreneurship as a term can really encompass so much more. And a social entrepreneur is not necessarily someone that starts a business, but it's someone that's really trying to address a social or environmental challenge or gap that they've seen, where they have an innovative solution, which could be, a change in policy that they want to advocate for, or a business idea, or a partnership idea. So really the term can encompass so much. And I think within our cohort here, within this class, I feel that for those in the Zoom today and those not here present, you're going to want to draw pieces from this course that help the area that you're planning to work on. And we do focus on the social enterprise, but if the social enterprise is not what you are working towards, that's fine. I really hope that you'll still find that all these pieces that we unpack are going to help you with those projects that you're trying to create, and also might just help to steer you in a personal, professional direction towards how you want to use your agency and have impact in the world. Nkosi, I see that you've logged in again. Do you want to give it one quick try? Okay, well, I'm going to move ahead and let's hope that that corrects itself within the course. Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to jump right back into it. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. So something that I heard recently with, something I didn't mention in my intro is I'm also currently pursuing my master's in sustainable development. And part of one of the topics I'm working on at the moment is social entrepreneurship and also alternative forms of business, and how these can be powerful spaces for change. So something that came up in one of the courses that I was doing recently was the first step is simply showing up. And in terms of if there is some sort of action, some sort of change we want to see in the world, really just by showing up is really one of the most powerful first steps within that direction. And, you know, so I also thank you all for showing up today in the class. And I look forward to continuing showing up within this course as well. So I'm going to come back to this because we're quite a small group. And so we're going to do some breakout rooms, but I'm going to come back to this one a little bit later and we can share towards the end. Now I'd like to chat about one of the resources that we share within this week is looking at Grameen Bank, Dr. Muhammad Yunus. And I want to ask within this group, what do you feel, firstly, are you aware of the story of Dr. Muhammad Yunus and Grameen Bank? And if so, what do you think is the most influential part of that story, or why is his story so influential? Is there anyone that would like to talk to that within our group? And Nkosi, please feel free to use the chat box while we can't hear you. And I'll also say that for those that have seen the resource, the article that we share, it is an old resource and we're aware of that. And Grameen Bank has seen some change to their vision, to their mission over the years. And we talk more to that, to their current business model within our later sessions. It's one of the case studies that we come back to quite regularly. But we really like the format of that article in terms of how it tells the story of how Dr. Muhammad Yunus began. And it also talks about this idea of a founder and people getting behind a founder. So, Nkosi, I see your yes. This is, yes, he started one of the first microfinance banks and it was in India. Yes, and has provided funding for many, many people. Yes, Ernesto.
Okay, well, answer about what move. I think I am moving by the wonderful, powerful, transforming power of the music in the persons and the people, especially children. Give the opportunities for the people to enjoy the culture. Not only music. Well, I am in music because my personal experience, but I'm thinking more about all the possibilities of culture, plastical arts, theater, dance. That well, especially here in my country is most in the Central Valley. So.
Okay.
Out of the Central Valley, the possibilities of enjoying culture are very few or none. Okay. So I think this is what I'm moving, trying to close the culture to all the regions in Costa Rica, especially when I'm working now.
Yeah, and I love that, and it's great that you've got such a call to that, right? And that it moves you and you're called to work within that space. It's a great example of that. Thank you. Yes, Wendy.
All right. The bank, from what I could remember, it targets the poorest of people. And I think their main target is on women who tend to receive a large percent of the bank's loans, and they convert the deposits to loans for the neediest of people as well.
Yes, exactly. And I think that it shows us a really good example of social entrepreneurship and what we understand social entrepreneurship to be, in the way that he moved into a space supporting, you know, those that had the least finance, those that ordinarily weren't able to get loans because they don't have any assets and they don't have any collateral and banks would ignore them. But he saw something there that could change and then created a service to fill that gap. And in the end has been widely successful, but he really moved into a new territory with a very, was innovative at the time, idea. So, and that's something that we think about with social entrepreneurship. Where are the gaps within these complex systems that we work within that we can target to try and help create wider systemic change? That makes sense. And to very successful, right? The Grameen Bank keeps going and now is doing extraordinarily well. Something else that stood out for me in the article to keep in mind is he didn't exactly know how it was going to work. So when you read that article, he said, you know, I just saw that something had to be done. You know, Ernesto, similar to you, he was moved by this, the fact that he noticed that people only needed a very small amount of money, you know, to be able to improve their lives. And he was moved by this. So he immediately took action and, you know, did something, but didn't exactly know how this was going to pan out in the long run and how it was going to evolve. And I think that's a really important piece. He just tried, he experimented, he found a temporary solution, and then it built into a much bigger, well-functioning entity that helps, you know, hundreds and thousands of women and families year on year. And it's a really interesting case study. So we do look at it a lot over the weeks, because when you look at how they register, how they measure their impact, it's a very helpful exercise. So we will see it a bit. So I do encourage you to read that resource if you haven't yet. And there's also one of the resources for this week. There's a video by Danielle Thornton, I think the name is, and it's a very good video as well. So I'd encourage you to watch that one this week. There's usually quite a lot of resources for you to get to. Would anyone else like to add to that? Anything else about the article that, if you've seen the article, or about the story that stands out for you? So when we think of sort of the traditional textbook definition of social entrepreneurship, is the use of traditionally considered business techniques by entrepreneurs to develop, fund, and implement solutions to social, cultural, or environmental issues. And I think that's, the last part of that sentence is really the core of it. It's implementing solutions to social, cultural, or environmental issues. And then it's how do we use these business tools that are out there to do that? And I think, how do we fund that? This is the real essential question with the projects that we do, is how do we fund it in a way that makes it sustainable, financially sustainable over the long term? And really want to understand the importance of that. Funding is vital for the longevity of the program. So however that funding comes in, and we'll talk more about this next week when we look at for-profit and non-profit, but however that funding is coming in, we want to make sure that you can sustain that positive impact that you want to have. You can sustain that social, cultural, environmental issue or mission that you have. Then the idea of social enterprises, which is usually seen as what social entrepreneurs form. These can look different in many parts of the world. So that definition is quite flexible. Some countries will see social enterprise as one thing, and another country as something else. When we look at it in this course, it's really looking at the project, the organization, the business that you want to start, and how do we get the funding? What is the income stream going to be that helps you make this project sustainable? And please just remember, if you have questions while I'm going, please raise your hand, drop in the chat box. You can interrupt anytime. So a concept that we'll talk about a bit is, okay, private organizations doing good. So, big companies out there in the world that are privately run, that are generating profit, that are profit driven, but now are also aiming to have a social impact. Or NGOs, nonprofit organizations, fundraising to pay their bills, or something else. And this is part of the piece, the something else, which is where social entrepreneurship really sits. And other type of business models being explored with more collective backgrounds. It's the alternative to the regular way of doing business, and social entrepreneurship is a really powerful part of that. So the balance that a social enterprise needs to be able to do is, how do I stay focused on the mission of this cultural, social, environmental impact that I want the organization or the project to have? And then the business side, okay, how do I make sure that the funding is coming in, that the operational side is happening so that this whole project can be sustainable, and so I can keep fulfilling this mission. And Nkosi said, you love the name of the slide. Thank you. Was it the previous one? Thank you for chiming in there. But yeah, so this is the really important balance that a social enterprise needs to take. And what we'll talk a bit about more is, the more you're able to align the business model, where the funding is coming from, with the actual impact that you're having, the easier it's going to be for you to keep that entity running in a way where you can fulfill your mission, but you also have funding coming in. Okay, and now I just want to talk about one real world example. And you'll see that throughout the course, we pop examples in quite a lot. And because, one, it can just be really helpful to get ideas from what's already working. And we try and have examples from all over the world. And we have some examples that have, that are non-profit organizations, and we have others that are for-profit organizations and sort of in between. So the one I want to look at today is called Wakami. Now, you'll probably be able to sort of describe a couple of businesses that do something similar to what Wakami does. And I've seen quite a few organizations move into this space. And one of the really powerful parts of it is they have found a way to bring in tangible income for high quality goods or service. They have a really strong education component to it, and they have a really strong outreach. So they're very mission driven, but they also have this business side to it of bringing in profit. So what they do is they work within rural communities, they do training on jewelry making, and then they basically help to bring that jewelry to an international market and market it. So in terms of how there's a little bit about them here. They're sort of, the gap that they filled is, okay, there is great products being made, but they don't have the market, they don't have the platform to be able to sell it in a way that it actually helps to bring in a sustainable income. So Wakami helps to do that. And so they've essentially got two organizations, and this is a hybrid model that we'll talk more about in the course, but they have a non-profit organization that helps to do training and helps women establish their own businesses as well. And then they have their for-profit business, which is the sales, the export, the designs. So they operate both. And we talk a bit about registration in this course, but I would say we talk about it from an overview. Registrations in different countries look very different and can be quite complex. So this is an overview of the sort of more traditional ways of registering a business, but you would need to do the research within your country to really find out, okay, how does that work for me? And we'll talk about that more next week. Okay, so this is our key example for today. And I'm also just going to give you a bit of an intro as to how we sort of run and operate Good Travel in this regard in terms of funding, how we have in the past, I'd say, because we're seeing some changes. But essentially what we do at Good Travel is the way that we bring in most of our income is through our trips. So we have trips all over the world, which we within the trips, make them quite educational. So we format the trips in such a way that we're educating travelers about how to be good travelers when they go to a country. We're educating them on what to expect within the country, what environmental, social, cultural challenges do they face? What is the positive impact that travelers can come when they're there? What are the do's and don'ts? And then fundraising from that trip goes to support. We have partner organizations that we work with in different countries, so who help us coordinate and build the itinerary. And the funding from the trip supports our work, but also goes to support the organization. And all of the money for accommodation, activities, all that funding that's coming in from the trip, we try and make sure that that stays in the country and the place that we're visiting. So we try and choose establishments that are very committed to supporting the local community, protecting the environment. So every part of the trip, we try and make it have a positive impact. But through that trip, we're also funding the work that we do. And that funding helps us to also focus on our awareness campaigns, our educational training, and all the other pieces that we want to do, which is harder to bring income in to cover, but the trips help to fund that. So that's just an example of how if you can marry that, your impact with your way of bringing in income, it can be easier, and then you're constantly working on your mission, which can feel very satisfying. I will say a caveat, that business model during COVID, unfortunately didn't work for 2 years. So we've had to iterate because of, just what happened in the market and with tourism. And we had to find other ways to try and support our partners because we couldn't run trips. But this is part of what we have to navigate, I think, as we work within these complex spaces. Okay, so now I want to come back to that question, which Ernesto, thank you. You already gave us your answer to that, and I appreciate that. Is for the others in the room, if you wouldn't mind sharing what moves you. So this might be an issue in the world that you're really moved by, and there might be a few. So for this, you can just choose one. Like, is there something in particular that really moves you into action, and what next step you take from that? Economic inequality. Yeah. And do you see social entrepreneurship as this broader idea being something that can address that? Great. And something I'd say to that as well is where I think social entrepreneurship is a very powerful alternative to typical ways of doing business is because it's looking at that issue first. Okay, economic equality. If I want to address economic equality, how am I going to do that? And then even within the way that I organize my business and the way that I sell my service and the way that I fundraise, am I making 100% sure that at the same time, I'm not perpetuating the problem, but I am really trying to address economic equality? So it's like you're so focused on the mission that it's so powerful. And then it's like, great, I need to fund it and make sure that it's going and it's running. But it's that attachment to purpose and mission that is very inspiring about social entrepreneurship. Yes, it affects every aspect of our lives. Yes. Nkosi, poor waste management, burning landfills. Yes, okay. Yes, burning landfills is not the best way. And poor waste management. Also a really great space, right, for potential business ideas, business models that look to solve the problem. Inequality, yes. Yeah, exactly. And what we're talking to as well. And then even beyond economic, but this something that we see coming up in social entrepreneurship research even more is the idea of ownership. So when we're starting businesses, and something to be mindful of as you embrace being a social entrepreneur, you know, if that's a term you want to hold on to personally, is how are we making sure that as we create businesses and create projects, that many people are being lifted and can have ownership and inclusion into that? Because if we're not focused on that, it could become a business that supports a few, as opposed to a business that really helps to uplift many. I know, Nkosi, I do hope we have your mic next time, because I know you'll have a lot to add on this. And Arak, I'm so sorry, because I know you mentioned another name you prefer to be called by. So I will get that right the next time, or if you could tell me again, I would appreciate that. But do you see
Otobi.
Otobi? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Otobi, yes, sure. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Do you feel that social entrepreneurship is a powerful space to address inequality?
Yes, I do feel it contributes because inequality has many facets, and I think also there are very many facets of inequality: economic, social, political, and there are so many. So yes, social entrepreneurship is a good. Is one of the ways of addressing, especially like one of my colleagues said, economic inequality. I think social entrepreneurship is actually quite a good one, but it also addresses part of social exclusion or social inequality, because anyway, the whole thing is there's a facet more to deal with the element of economic inequality and exclusion of people. For example, the Grameen Bank, it addresses financial inclusion of people, which is more to address the inequality gap that exists between those who have and those who do not have. So yes, I believe it's true, because the classical charity that some of us are involved in does not really fully address the social injustices that we have around. Sometimes I think the social entrepreneurship may be a better vehicle to deliver some of this way of working, because it has an element of empowerment. It empowers the person. But if you look at the typical humanitarian work like I do, sometimes I feel it is very disempowering, because you know, people feel themselves like they're more victims, and it does not work on the agency of a person, or the, you know, the capacity. Does not look at the talents, does not address so many things. It problematizes the person instead of empowerment. So that's a little bit of debate that sometimes I also have within myself. And I think social entrepreneurship is actually a good vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and you touch on a really good point of which we talk to a little later, like looking at the role of charity and that nonprofit organizations and the way that support is given, and then looking at social entrepreneurship and alternative business models and the way that works. And, you know, I think that there is place for both within different spaces, and it's really often a partnership between the two can be really effective when that can happen. You know, with other actors in that too. And so another term, you know, to think of as we go through this course is that of actors. We talk about social entrepreneurs as individuals, but also key actors that help to create change and move an idea forward. But yeah, thank you so much for that insight. I think it's a really important talking point within this course. And I also just want to, as we move through the next 6 weeks, I just want to also say that this course is very much an overview. We try to cover a lot of content, but we try to give you insights into each area. But we don't have the time to sort of dig really deep into all of these concepts. We want to give you enough to be able to move forward and to have tools and ideas to help you strategize which direction you want to go. So just something to be mindful of with each of those course areas that we discuss and the resources that we share. There's more to dig into there. But I do hope that you'll get a really good sense of the topic from the resources. Okay, I just want to bring up one sort of final slide, and we can still have some discussion after this if there's some questions. But it's something that a social entrepreneur said to me once that I always thought was really powerful is start where you are. So thinking back to Dr. Yunus, he didn't exactly know how to solve the problem, but he took action and he took a step in the positive direction, and then he built it from there. And while we want to have our business plan and we want to have plans and we want to really understand the impact that we are going to have, and I'd say, you know, being reflective about our own agency and why we want to have that impact and how we plan to do that and any power dynamics involved in that. But the idea is, like, really start with what you have, start with what moves you, and then go from there to figure out your journey forward. So are there any other sharings or questions about the course, about what we've talked about today, or just any insights that you'd like to share or discuss? Please ask me lots of questions about the course. I love to answer questions. Just so you know as well, for those in the room today, we have about a cohort of 14, 15 people. So, and I do hope for those that haven't joined us today that you'll be able to join us in other weeks. I have tried to schedule the times and days, and I'm sorry if that's a bit confusing, but it makes it easier for, you know, people that are busy today to be able to join us maybe on a Saturday and what have you. So I do hope that we'll be able to get pretty much everyone in the room at some point. We do record the videos so you can watch them later, so that's fine as well if you can't join. In terms of the forums every week, we encourage you to go in there in that week if you can and take part in the forums. It's a great opportunity to connect with others, especially if not everyone can join the Zoom call, but at least you can chat to them in the forum. Also, digging into some of those topics we're bringing into the forum will help you to get that right for your business plan at the end. So I'd encourage you to stay with that within the course. The course is over 6 weeks. You then have 2 weeks to do your business plan at the end. So if you fall behind, please don't stress about it, because you can come back and do those forums a little bit later. If something happens at work and you really have no time, you know, we just ask you to try and do your best each week. And then you can come back later and fill in those forums a bit later as well. But we've tried to structure it in a way that you can have as much time on your own to work through the coursework at your own time. But then we have this session to sort of dig into things a bit deeper and have some open conversation. So as much as you can join, that would be great, because your insights and your experience are really helpful for the whole group and for myself. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Nkosi. Yeah, I'm excited too. Nkosi said I'm just going to read it for it. It's the first time I'm seeing a nice step-by-step social enterprise like a guidebook. Great. I do hope it's helpful. And as I say, I know, speaking to those within the wider course as well, that not everyone is planning starting a social enterprise per se. But whatever your project area, I do think that this process can be helpful. Also, what I do is in the middle of the course, sort of week 3, I send out an invite to do a one-on-one if you're interested, so that you can really talk about your idea and your concept more, and I can work with you to help strategize that a bit. So I'll send that out within the middle of the course once we've covered some ground. And then you can schedule a call with me at any point, because it can be hard to get into the details of your own project within our webinars. Yeah, and I love doing those. So please sign up. I really enjoy talking through these ideas and learning from you all. Okay, any other questions or input? Okay, I know also Hannah from EISC was going to join us within this. I see if I can try and get her to come in next week. She's going to give just an overview of EISC and the several other courses. Another thing to think about with this course is we touch on some key areas. As I say, we do an overview, but then EISC has other great courses that do a deep dive into those areas. So for instance, tackling finance is a great one, deep dive. There's social media marketing, great one, deep dive. There's measurements, looking at how you measure impact, deep dive. So as you work through your business plan and you're thinking towards your business project, just keep in mind that there's other courses there that can probably help you on the journey as well. And what we try to do within this course is to give you the basics and enough for you to move forward. But then also as a good springboard to dive deeper into that. Okay. And please feel free to email me at any time throughout the course as well. I'll be, in the classroom each day replying to your comments, and you can email me and I can answer things as we go too. Great. And it has been really nice chatting with all of you today and getting a chance to meet you. And I look forward to each of the webinars. And yeah, I hope that you all have a great day in your respective places as well.
Hey, Shelley, part 2
Yes.
of today's session, you're not doing that?
What's that, Wendy? Sorry?
Part 2, the part 2 lecture, are you doing that today?
The part 2 lectures? No, then that would be, oh, do you mean from the videos? Because I split it in 2.
Yes.
So this will be what we cover for today's session.
Okay.
And then next webinar, we'll go into more content.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we try and keep each session, I think I did mention, but maybe the rest of the group didn't hear, so just for their sake too. We try to keep it between an hour and a half.
Okay.
So we share certain insights within that time frame. We had a small group this week, so we've managed to get it into an hour, but usually with the bigger groups with more discussion and more sort of the sharing of backgrounds and things, we end up being at an hour and a half. But we will get into all of that content next week in the next webinar.
Okay, good.
Was there anything in particular that was standing out for you on that you want to hear more about?
No, it's just that when I went through the resources, I saw part 1 and part 2 for today. So
yes,
yeah.
Oh yes, and so I broke that up for you just because it's quite a long. We talk a lot. I talk a lot in that first session, so I just broke it down to make it more manageable.
Okay, great. No problem.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, with the resources as well, we know there's a lot, but they can. I do hope you can get through all of them. They're very helpful. And as I say, ones that I'd flag, if you could read that article about Dr. Eunice, and if you can watch that video by Penny Thornton, I think it's a really powerful video and talks to some of what we've touched on today. Great, thank you. So with that, I'll bring it to a close, but I hope that you enjoy the next week's work as well, and hopefully see you next week. And thank you for those that joined, and thank you for those that will watch at home.
Thank you. It was very insightful to begin.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. So glad to hear that. And for me too. Thanks. And Courtney, I hope we can hear you next time. It would be great. Thank you for chiming in on the chat as well. Ernesto, I hope you keep well there.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye. Bye, Wendy. Thanks so much for joining.
Okay, great.
Bye.